Frugal Yankee Dad here with another tip on how you can live better with less and perhaps save the planet in the process. Now, the warning, particular episode is longer than normal and may require some thought. I'll try not to make it intense, okay? Today we're going to learn about the philosophy of frugality as it has evolved through the ages. As I explained in the introductory video, this analytical framework is what I think sets this series apart from the normal online money saving tip. We want to look at the factors behind spending choices and other decisions on priority so that hopefully we can work together to develop a simple, consistent philosophy of frugality that will gradually simplify our choices on everything from career choices, no kidding, to buying household items, while making these choices at least somewhat consistent with our values. We'll see. When I first started thinking about doing Frugal Yankee Dad, I just thought about it as a somewhat lighthearted series of tips on how to live frugally. I quickly learned that living frugally was a lot more complex than it seems on the surface. In particular, there are many trade-offs to consider, some of them frivolous and some very serious, and they may not be immediately apparent. Even more important, frugality is a term that means many things to many people, and so we really should be flexible and inclusive. Now, one day it popped into my head that there might spawn philosophies of frugality, and it busted slightly more attentive in my philosophy courses at Harvard. I admit I would have realized now already. Mea culpa. I have to admit, I have a tendency to study everything to death. A rudimentary search brought up a common name in frugality. Diogenes, Plato, Seneca, Epicurus, Thoreau, Emerson, even Nietzsche, to mention only a few. Yet, this has been a really serious area of thought and debate for millennia. When I did a cursory search of our libraries in Callum, the first book that popped up to it was The Wisdom of Frugality, a really thoughtfully written gem by Emrys Westacott, who is a professor of philosophy at Alfred University. I was quickly hooked. You'll be hearing a lot of snippets through the book in the future, and I strongly recommend reading it if you'd like to explore the concept of frugality in greater depth. I particularly love the subtitle. Neatly summarizes the content. And less is more, and here's the kicker, more or less. Yes, the issue of frugality is one marked by many bad judgments, ambiguities, trade-offs, and skepticism. While acknowledging the positive aspects of every assertion about frugality, such as forgoing excess and trying to live in harmony with the earth, Westacott also applies skeptics to some of these assertions. What really constitutes frugality? For example, in the early chapters, he focuses on who founded the Epicurean school as an alternative to the Platonic school and was so dominant at that time. Epicurus and his followers were known for their simple meals. Ironic twist, the dictionary tells us that in our day, as you probably are aware, Epicurean has been corrupted to be, quote, fond of or adapted to luxury or indulgence in sexual pleasure. Methinks Epicurus would not be pleased. Using his skeptic's lens, Westacott dissects the still common view frugality is simply made possible by reducing your needs to the basics. Let me read an excerpt to give you an idea of how he analyzes the concept. The claim that simple living is the surest path to happiness obviously rests on a certain conception of happiness. At the heart of this conception, at least for most of the frugal sages, is the idea that happiness requires fully that we satisfy our basic needs and desires. This view is common to Epicureans and Stoics, and to the many influenced by them. Now, just what counts as necessary for a satisfactory life is obviously a matter on which reasonable people can disagree. Jean Cazares, for example, her reflections on this question includes happiness, morality, autonomy, and knowledge, all of which would probably be endorsed by both Epicureans and Stoics. She also throws in self-expression, personal development, progress, which seem to be more modern values, while not including friendship. There's also a possible distinction to be drawn between simply being happy and living a satisfactory or fulfilling life. Pursuing this here was far too far afield, and it's not really one that the ancients made. The thesis, to be happy, we only satisfy our basic needs, is most appealing. Yet, while it may not provenly at the wise words of Epicurus and the rest, the way most of us in the modernized live suggests that we don't really accept their claims, or that we at least have a much expanded view of what constitutes our basic. So, as the above passage suggests, if there's one thing to take away from Westacott, seems to me, it's that it's what constitutes frugality has been a constantly evolving concept since the early Greek philosophers. Interestingly enough, the philosophical discussion has been strongly influenced throughout the years by the evolution of the economy. I hadn't thought of it. It makes sense, actually, you think. As economies evolve and produce more goods and services, that has to influence philosophers and our choices of what to keep and what to give up. So what constitutes frugality has evolved as the economy has. It's particularly fascinating to realize that so much of the seminal thinking on the issue was done by the early Greeks. Now, after all, they lived in an era not so far removed from the days when most people were living in caves and were forced to concentrate on mere survival. But at their time, there must have been few who were affluent enough to at least speculate on whether they'd be happier giving up on at least some of the abundance that they enjoyed. In addition to an exhaustive review of 2,000 years of evolving philosophical thought on frugality, I particularly enjoyed his latter chapters, where Westacott applied frugality to current controversies, such as consumerism and global warming. Environmentalism is hands down my passion. I admit to often taking an absolute position on aspects of sustainability, complete with, I'll admit it, a holier-than-thou attitude towards those who don't share my view. Westacott reiterates that, for most people, trying to limit material consumption was futile until recently because, as I said before, they had to struggle just to put food on the table. He also explains that the of exploiting nature guilt-free in the past was consistent with the biblical message about man having dominion over the earth. By the way, that anthropocentric view really gets me. After all, we're part of nature, not its overlord. Get to that some other time. Well, generally sympathetic to environmental, he says, quote, "We have to recognize that legitimate questions can be raised concerning the supposed environmental benefits of frugality and simplicity. Consideration of some of these possible objections will help us form a more judicious assessment of the environmentalist part." End quote. An example is particularly sensitive for me as somebody who's just gotten solar within the last year or so. He points out that the benefits of emission and fuel-free solar panels has to also take into consideration the manufacturing of those panels. And that, of course, requires mining materials, energy usage, and producing toxic. Now, A homework for this week, as far as I'm concerned, is that somehow it seems to me Westacott's overwhelming is that what constitutes frugality has been a never-ending dialogue for millennia, shaped greatly by the evolution of the economy and material possessions, and that we must avoid categorical so on the subject at all costs because of this pattern of change. Who knows? Maybe doing this series, you and I will be able to contribute to the future evolution of frugality. Given all the ambiguities and variations of frugality over time, I think I'll leave the last word this week, not to Professor Westacott, to my psychic, who always said to me, David, keep your eye. I suspect the good professor would agree. So that's all for today. Remember to subscribe to the series. Think you hadn't already, and bye-bye for now.